Hey, welcome to MediByte. Today, we are diving into a bacterial infection that affects literally millions of people all over the globe, and it's a huge cause of dysentery. It's called shigellosis, and honestly, understanding how this thing works is the absolute key to stopping it.
So let me just start with a question for you. What if there was a common bacteria out there that was so incredibly tough it could cause a really severe illness from just a few germs? I mean, way, way fewer than you'd need with most other bacteria.
Well, that bacteria is Shigella, and the illness it causes is shigellosis. At its core, it's an infection that can lead to watery diarrhea. But in the more severe cases, it causes dysentery, and that is a really painful condition where stools can contain blood, pus, or mucus.
To really get a handle on this illness, we've got to start with the bacteria itself. So what exactly makes Shigella such an effective little threat?
Okay, here it is. This is the secret to Shigella's success. See, our stomach acid is an amazing defense system, right? It destroys most of the germs we swallow. But Shigella, it's just built different. It's designed to survive that acid. And what that means is that even a super small number of these bacteria can cruise right through the stomach, get to the large intestine, and just launch a full-blown infection. So the bacteria is tough enough to get inside. But how does it actually attack? Well, it all starts with how incredibly easily it can spread from one person to another. The main way it gets around is what's called the fecal-oral route. And, it's a pretty simple but unfortunately very effective chain of events. So, an infected person has the bacteria in their stool. Then, without proper hand washing, their hands, or maybe objects like toys and diapers, get contaminated. If someone else touches those items and then touches their mouth or eats food that's been contaminated, they swallow the bacteria. And just like that, the cycle starts all over again. And this cycle really explains why we see outbreaks in very specific places. Think about it. Anywhere that's crowded or where sanitation might be a challenge, places like daycare centers, long-term care facilities, even cruise ships, they all become the perfect breeding ground for Shigella to just take off once it gets introduced.
All right, so once the bacteria has spread and an infection takes hold, what does that attack actually look and feel like? Let's break down the symptoms and the very real dangers of this illness.
The first symptoms can actually show up differently depending on your age. For adults, it might start with some painful stomach cramps and that constant urgent feeling like you have to go to the bathroom. In children, though, it's often way more sudden and dramatic. We're talking a high fever, being really irritable, and a loss of appetite, sometimes even before the diarrhea kicks in.
And just how severe are we talking here?
Well, in serious cases, a person might have to go to the bathroom over 20 times in a single day. Just imagine that. Think about how physically draining and dangerous that level of fluid loss would be. And yeah, that kind of fluid loss leads to some really serious complications, which are most common and most dangerous in young kids. We're talking about incredibly high fevers that can cause seizures or severe dehydration that can lead to shock. And in rare cases, there's a very serious kidney problem called hemolytic uremic syndrome. So the main takeaway here is this is so much more than just a simple stomach bug. Okay, so that covers the threat. But the good news is we have a clear plan of defense. So now let's look at how shigellosis is diagnosed and, more importantly, how we treat it. Diagnosing shigellosis is actually pretty straightforward. A doctor will probably suspect it based on the symptoms, but to be sure, they'll need a stool sample. A lab can then grow or culture the bacteria from that sample to get a positive ID. Sometimes they use faster methods like PCR testing to get the results back a little quicker. Now, when it comes to treatment, one thing is more important than anything else: rehydration. The biggest danger from shigellosis is that massive loss of water and electrolytes from all the diarrhea. So replacing those fluids isn't just a good idea, it is the single most critical part of getting better.
And that brings us to some really clear do's and don'ts. Do focus on replacing fluids. Do see a doctor if it's a severe case because antibiotics might be needed. But here is a huge don't. Avoid those over-the-counter anti-diarrhea medicines. It sounds a little backward, I know, but those medicines can actually trap the bacteria inside your system, which can just prolong the infection and maybe even make things worse. So while treatment is definitely effective, the best defense is always a good offense, right? So let's talk about the single most powerful tool we have against shigellosis: prevention. And this is just so important to remember. Because we know this bacteria's main game plan is how easily it spreads, we also know its greatest weakness. We have the power to break that chain of infection before it even has a chance to start.
The prevention strategy is super simple but incredibly effective, and it really all comes down to hygiene. Thorough hand washing is, without a doubt, the #1 defense, especially after using the bathroom or changing diapers. And of course, if you're sick, it is absolutely crucial that you don't prepare food for other people and that you stay home for at least 2 days after the diarrhea stops. This is how we protect everyone around us. Now, there is a vaccine being studied, but there isn't one available to the public just yet. And that means all those hygiene practices we just talked about, they aren't just good advice. They are truly our only effective line of defense against the spread of shigellosis. So I'll just leave you with this thought to chew on. We've seen just how easily this resilient little bacteria can rip through a community, especially hitting the most vulnerable people. So how does a simple personal act like washing your hands become this powerful tool for protecting not just yourself, but your entire community? If you found this explainer helpful, please do me a favor and hit that like button. Share it with someone who might find it useful, and of course, subscribe to MediByte for more explainers on the topics that really matter. Thanks so much for watching.